This is Scott Spears, and I'd like to welcome you to Scott Spears Now. Today we have a great episode for anybody living in the state of Ohio because we're going to profile an Ohio television legend, Marty Sullivan. Although you may not remember him by that name, you may remember him as the superhero Saturday afternoon movie host on WUAB television in Cleveland, Ohio. His name, Superhost. Soup's on with a hello there. He was on WUAB Saturday afternoon, Saturday morning from 1969 until 1989. December of 89 to be exact. He's retired now. He's living in Oregon, the state of Oregon, where he moved after he left Ohio, along with his sister after the run at WUAB. But today he puts back on the cape, he puts back on the suit, and guess what? Soup's on as we profile a legendary movie host, Superhost. This is Scott Spears, and today we're joined by a man who kept you entertained for 20 years, hosting movies, cartoons, and shorts on WUAB television out of Cleveland as Superhost. Today we're joined by the man behind the cape, Marty Sullivan. Marty, so good to see you, and a special occasion, you put the red nose on and got back in the old rig.
I did indeed, yes. Especially for you, Scott.
Well, I am very appreciative of that. What does it feel like to be in that again?
Tight. I put on a few pounds, and it's kind of tight. But other than that, it feels like old times.
How many of those suits did you have?
I think there were about 4 over the 20 years. They got pretty ratty. I had to replace them, you know.
How long does it take you to get in the outfit? Paint the nose, put the costume on. How long did that take then? How long does it take now?
Well, I used to leap into it real quick, about 2 minutes, back when I was doing the news and stuff. This time it took me about 10 minutes.
Where do you...
It took me 10 minutes to find it. It was in the other closet, and I had to look through everything in there. Finally found it.
What does that mean to you?
The suit?
Yes.
Oh, just, I don't know. It reminds me of Cleveland and Ohio more than anything. And the great folks that lived there and were so kind to me all those years.
We should say now that you have moved to Oregon in your retirement. Why did you leave Cleveland?
Well, my sister, her husband had passed away, and she was living in Texas, and she was tired of the heat, and I was tired of the cold in Ohio, so I said, well, let's try Oregon. So we did. We moved out there, and then she passed away, and I just stayed.
Do you ever come back to Ohio?
I was back twice, I think. Once was for like kind of a class reunion for Channel 43. And the other time was to visit a friend who lived out in Stowe, Ohio.
When you come back, what does it feel like?
Oh, it's old times revisited. I usually so busy seeing everybody that you don't have much time to think about it. Just, you know, go.
Would you ever consider moving back to Ohio?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think I have another move left in me.
Happy where you are?
I'm happy where I am. The weather's just gorgeous out here. It's rainy in the wintertime, but it's kind of rainy in Cleveland too, so.
That's right. Well, Marty, I did ask you to do something today. I asked you, aside from putting on the suit, to bring along some of the Superhost memorabilia that you've kept over the years. So if you would like to show some of that right here off the bat, before we get into the bulk of the interview, I'd love you to do that.
Here, the Scott Spears show and tell. One of the original, it is the original, actually. I only had one pair of sneakers the whole trip, the whole show, and that's one of them. Now I gotta put it back on because my foot's cold. Oh, here's another one you might like. This was at the Cuyahoga County Fair
Oh,
in
look.
Berea, Ohio. We gave away these little toys. There was a big brouhaha because on the air we called them frisbees. A frisbee is a patented word or product, so we couldn't use frisbee. We had to use flying disc. And this is one we gave away to people that came up to the fair. So there. Now, what do we got here? Oh, yeah. My friend Bob Ferguson, who used to send in pictures to soup, made this up. It's a bobblehead soup doll. I think he only made one or two of them, and I got one.
Now that is a collectible if I've ever seen one.
Isn't it though?
That is neat.
He's even got one finger up like me. Okay, well that was one thing. And then when I was I lived out in Peninsula, Ohio for a while. And some young man came to my door out there and brought me a statue that he made.
Oh.
He was a little bit challenged, but I certainly appreciate the thought behind it. It's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. We all would agree.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's see what else I got in my little shopping bag. Oh, I finally won an Emmy Award. It's the Longevity Award. I was in the business so long, I didn't actually win an Emmy, but they gave me an award anyway. And I thank them for that, the Academy in Cleveland.
As well, they should have. You deserve one.
Oh, and a lady at work made this up. I thought this was kind of novel. It's a stained glass thing of soup. See, and it's got the little shield, and my gorgeous kisser right there on the face. And her name was Tressler. Is Tressler. Larry's wife. Larry was one of the audio men at Channel 43, right? And I think he's retired now. Oh, I got one other thing here to show you. I had a Superhost Open golf tournament once, and we printed up these balls, these tennis golf balls, and if you can see it.
Yes, yes.
This is the only one left in captivity, and it had Channel 43 on the other side.
Now that's an original.
It is.
Now, do you golf, Marty?
I used to hack around, but I never played golf.
Well, Marty, I want to get into some of your career here because I was looking on the internet the other day, and this is what spurred this interview to some degree. I had never seen any video of you just talking about your career as it was. Let's just go back to the beginning. What was the childhood like?
Oh, my actual childhood. Well, it was on the planet Krypton. No, that's a standing joke. I was born in Detroit, Michigan. Oh, these many years ago, at Harper Hospital. 1932 was the year, and that was just after the Depression. So my dad moved around, well, the family moved around a lot because my dad would have work and then he wouldn't have work and they'd go on some other job, and we moved a lot in that period of time between Saginaw, Michigan and Detroit, Michigan, and 2 or 3 farms my dad ran, and that meant a lot of different schools. Went to Catholic school in Saginaw, and but that was about it for my younger years. Then I went to a boarding school in Windsor, Ontario, starting in the 8th grade. And let's see, I went there till 1950 when I graduated. Then I went on to college, also at Assumption. And after about 3 years of that, and my marks went down the old scooter. So the draft was after me, so I joined the Navy. Spent 4 years in the Navy. A year and a half on Guam and a year and a half on a guided missile test ship in Oxnard, California.
What was your experience in the Navy like?
It was boring. It was during the Korean War, but I was stationed on Guam, and there was no war there. There's a lot of unhappy sailors.
After this military career that wasn't much in your childhood, how'd you end up in broadcasting?
Let me see. Well, I came back, decided to try college again, went back in for about a year, decided I didn't like it. In the meantime, I went to the Detroit School of Announcing and Speech, written by a couple of older announcers in town, and got a job in a radio station down in Peru, Indiana. And I was there for a little over a year, I think, and then came back to Detroit, and I worked part-time for WWJ in Detroit. And then I got a full-time job at WJR in Detroit as a staff announcer. And I was there for about a year and a half, I think. Then they canned me.
For what?
Because at WJR, well, they were right. They had a program called, I've forgotten on it, Musical Melodies or something like that. And they had writers who would write things and play appropriate music for like a half hour. Well, they wanted the music to end right when the program ended. And it was my job as the announcer to back time the records so it would end right on when the program ended. Well, I got busy with something else and forgot to back time the record, so it was an instrumental, so I just decided to fade out of it. Oh, bad move. They didn't like that at all. So a week or 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever, they said, we're going to have to let you go. And they did.
Well,
That was a radio thing.
how did you end your radio career on that note and end up at WUAB in Cleveland?
Well, when I left WJR, by popular demand, I got a job at a TV station out in Jackson, Michigan. But I was just doing voiceover work there, so it was just like being in radio. In the meantime, one of the newsmen at WJR in Detroit was hired in at WGAR in Cleveland as a news director. And he knew I was out in Jackson, so he called me on the phone and said, you want to be a newsman? I said, sure. So I off to Cleveland, and I became a newsman for WGAR radio. Then I was there for a while, and somebody in the advertising business offered me a job, a company called Ritchie and Sattler, and so I went with an ad agency because George left and went to New York to get a job. So let me see. I'm trying to retrace that now. Oh yeah, I was at the ad agency, and they fired me because they hired somebody in that had a bigger account than I did. So I was unemployed for about 6 months, and somebody told me a station was opening up in a bowling alley out in Parma. And I lived out in Parma Heights at that time, so I went over there and made application, and a man by the name of Ted Bays hired me as staff announcer and general whatever they needed. So I was a cameraman, audio man, announcer, what have you, because the station was just getting started.
What was it like to have a station in a bowling alley?
It was the nursery in a bowling alley, so the toilet was a little bitty one for the kids, but it flushed like a giant. It went like huge noise, and right next to it was the announcer's booth, you know, built into plywood and stuff. So they had a big sign on the door, "Do not flush when announcers talking."
Television, the glorious business that it was.
Oh, showbiz is so wonderful.
Well, how did you end up with this character, Superhost?
Well, I was out in the studio. The four lads were there, and they were lip syncing a tune called "Standing on the Corner." So it was for the Big Beat dance party with I've forgotten the guy's name now who did it. Anyway, I was floor directed with a little clipboard and a headset on. They wanted me to stand in the four places where the four lads were going to stand so they could get the lighting on. So I did. And I got the headset on, so the director is shouting at me that I'm unzipped. And I must have looked terribly uncomfortable trying to hold the clipboard and check and all that stuff. So the program director happened to be in there, Ted Baines, and he said to me, "Come up with an idea for a character and maybe we'll put it on the air." That's basically what happened.
Where did this character come from, personality-wise? We'll get to the outfit and the things of that nature in a second. Where did the character come from? The name, all of that?
Well, I consulted with a lot of people when I first decided to do it. And then I decided I would do Superman, but I couldn't do anything that Superman could do except wear a blue suit. So that was where the costume came from. I decided a super person that wasn't really super. And the red nose is because most kids show hosts threw them back. So I figured the red nose would be appropriate. And the voice came from a guy I worked with in Detroit, Ralph Binghay, who used to do several voices and keep them all bouncing on the radio. That's where the voice came.
Could you give us a little bit of the voice? I know you did at the top of the program.
Yeah, sure. His name was Sharp Frank. And his famous line was, the submarine captain said to all the men on the ship, "Remember, when we submerge, you gotta shut the door, you know."
And it's a funny voice, and it served you well for a long time.
It did, thanks to Ralph.
Absolutely. Now the sneakers, where did the idea come for the sneakers? Because that's interesting, an interesting addition to the suit.
Well, I thought since everything else was kind of oversized and over the top, I might as well get the biggest shoes I could put. You know, clowns always have big shoes. So I thought, well, that'd be good. He's a clown anyway.
Now the suit is modeled after Superman, obviously, but where did this suit come from? The actual fabric, it's a little different.
Well, it's actually a pair of just long johns dyed blue. And, of course, the trunks are just red satin trunks and a red satin cape.
Now,
and, of course, the wonderful shoes.
Well, now, at this point, could you get up and model it for us a little bit?
Oh, sure. First of all, there's the wonderful cape. Then there's the shield, which stands for Superhost. So there.
And it still
just to keep me warm.
And it still works like a charm. Marty, the movie picks in the beginning when you were showing movies. Who picked the movies?
Our program director at that time was Ron St. Charles, and he picked all the movies. Well, I think if they listed movies by cost, he started with the lowest ones, you know, the cheapest ones, and then well, we never got by the cheap ones. Well, maybe we did once in a while, but.
Now, what made Superhost different, I think, in my opinion, was that you did introduce the movies at the top, but there were these shorts in between the movies. I know Fat Whitman was a very popular one, the things you did with the convoy. Where did those come from? Who wrote those? What were those all about?
Well, it was kind of like the crew and the director and the audio man and anybody else in the station who happened to come up with an idea for a bit would suggest it and tell me what they were thinking about, and I thought it was good. For instance, the one with the bionic woman, where she tried to stop a car and her arms all stretched out. That came from one of the cleaning ladies at the station. And it was a marvelous idea, so I got some, what is that stuff for ductwork, for dryers, you know, and painted that blue, and that's why the arms stretched out. Mm. So everybody came up with an idea every now and then.
What was
without commercial takeoffs? That was fun.
What was your favorite part of doing that show? Was it the intros? Was it playing Superhost? Was it the skits? Was it the movies? What was it?
I think it was creating skits and things. That was a lot of fun.
When you're doing a show like that, 4 hours on Saturday, how much prep work goes into that?
So we would simply tape my bits. I would go in the day before or whenever and look at the movie and see where they broke it. And so I could talk a little bit about the movie, what was happening in it. And that's the way we did it. I just taped my bits one after the other, and the next day on Saturday, they would run those bits, and then when the bits are over, run the movie, or run commercials, or whatever.
For a long time, this worked very well, 1969 on, and then in the mid-1980s, they started to tinker with it a little bit. It went from movies to shorts to 1 hour to a different time on Saturday. What started to happen in the mid-80s?
Well, I think I just kind of ran out of gas as far as creativity. But I've been doing it so long, nothing worked anymore. And the fact that the station manager decided that he thought he could make more money by running wrestling in that spot. So wrestling took up so much time, they had to shorten my show. And if they didn't have time for, originally it was 2 movies and some short subjects. When he did that move, there wasn't so much time for it. So, and then they moved it around too. They used to start at noon and go to like 4 o'clock. Then they wouldn't start until 1 o'clock, and then they would start at 2 o'clock, and it just started and stopped. And I think people just lost it. Where is it? You know, we came here to watch it, and it isn't here. So I think they just got discouraged and went on to something else.
In the mid-1980s, yeah, these changes were taking place. In 1989, in December, the show finally wrapped up after a 20-year run, which is very significant in television. How much notice were you given that show was going to end in December that year?
I think I was given like 3 or 4 weeks.
Did they tell you the reason that it was ending?
No, I think the ratings were just down, and I think that's what they told me, but I don't remember that much.
When you knew the final show was approaching and it came, what was that like?
Well, the last show itself was kind of emotional because I knew it was the last time I'd be out there, and I was fine until one of the crew members said, "How you doing?" And then I kind of teared up because it was over, you know.
Before we
His name, by the way, was Jimmy Jackson, and he's still working in Cleveland.
Before we taped this interview today, I watched the beginning and the end of that final show, and it seemed kind of somber and almost the beginning of it, at least, when you said, "I told you I would have a special announcement," and the announcement is, "This is the last one."
Right.
What was the mood then? Did you feel it was treated right after 20 years to end that way?
Well, yeah, it was all right. There's no other way to end it. You know, you could have a big brouhaha, but if the show was over, let it go.
Up in the sky! It's a bird!
It's a plane!
No, it's Superhost! Give me the show! Meet mild-mannered director trainee Henry Brookerstein becomes Superhost. And with powers far beyond those of ordinary men, Superhost brings you Saturday afternoon. And now, Soup's On!
Hello there, folks, and welcome to our show. Now, as I promised last Saturday on the show, right at the end of the show, remember, I said we had a special announcement today. Well, here it is. The announcement is this is the last Superhost show. Period. There will be no more Superhost on Channel 43. Okay? A decision made by Superboss and the great brains in the front office. Okay? So we're not going to be here after today. So today we're going to devote this show to the Stooges and a cartoon, maybe a little civics, and cleaning up some last-minute details around the old theater. So come on in. Must I turn on the lights here? There we go. Wouldn't you know, the last day the switch works beautifully. Well, come on in. We haven't gotten that seal out of the theater since the days of vaudeville. Gee. Oh, yeah. And Jimmy Church, the great balloonologist here, made me a cowboy on a horse there, a rocking horse. It's cute. Thanks, James. Usually he twists small animals into the shape of balloons. Okay, now, here's our first Stooges for today. Well, that's about all the time, and I really mean that's about all the time we got, folks. Time for Soup to wrap it up and take off for parts unknown. I would like to thank all of you for all your kindnesses all these years. You've been wonderful. And Northeast Ohio is a class act. So there. Now, I got to go out of here and close up the doors. A lot of yum Scooby-Doo. Okay. I would like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for tuning in over the years. The last 20 years have been great. And mainly due to you. Okay? And now, I got to try to find my way to Krypton. So I'll see if I can... Now, nobody wants to stop for the old soup. Ah. See ya. You go to the Krypton?
When that show ended, did WUAB try to keep you around in any way?
They did, but they didn't know quite what to do with me. To tell you the truth. When Brooks Spectorski came back in, he was my original director when I started the show. He directed, well, he didn't do the pilot, but he did the show. And helped me make the super suit, as a matter of fact. We were at the laundromat making the blue super suit. But at the end, I forgot my train of thought there.
The sticking around at the station after it
Sticking around the station, yeah. Well, Brooke came in as general manager about that time, and he said something to the effect I was underutilized. In other words, they're paying me a big chunk of money for doing very little. So he created a job for me, putting in the public service announcements in the law for broadcast.
How long did you stick around the station after '89?
I retired in '93.
Were you ready to retire then?
Yeah, I was pretty well ready. Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. Did you ever, for a public appearance or any reason, reprise Superhost in those 3 years?
No, I never did.
When was the first time you came back and did that character after the show's end?
Let's see. Well, I never put the suit on again until the plain dealer sent a photographer out to take my picture because they were doing a retrospective on Superhost. So that was the last time I had the suit on, I believe.
Was there a reason you waited so long to do it again?
No, it was just nothing. There was no reason for it.
Would you have liked to have continued if the axe had not fallen in '89?
No, I think I was pretty well used up at that point, and there were no new hills to climb. It was just
a lot of people feel, a lot of people feel they get typecast as a character if they do it long enough on television. Have you ever disliked being associated with the Superhost character?
Oh no, it was marvelous. It was a great run, 20 years. Made some pretty good money. Not as good as it could have been, but
it never is. Yeah. If somebody came back today, because nostalgia is very popular. I know there are movie hosts here in Ohio who are doing things in theaters, and they have these conventions. If somebody came back to you and said, this is the internet age, you can do things from Oregon, that character was more than just a movie host, it was, a little political humor, a little comedy, let's do it again. At this point, would you do it?
I don't think so. I'm a little tired. And you have to devote an awful lot of thinking to it, even if you don't do a lot on the show.
When you look back at your career, what would you consider the highlight?
A highlight? Oh boy, that's a tough question. I could. One thing I remember more than anything else, I don't know if it's a highlight. I had just started doing the show and it was starting to get some public appearances in, and there was a company in Cleveland called Uncle Bill's. It was like a do-it-yourself store with lumber and all that stuff. Well, they had hired me for a Saturday appearance to hand out pictures to suit and sign autographs and stuff. So, fine, I did. And I'm standing there in the little building that they built in the middle of the store with aisles going off in different directions. And I'm standing there having to be a quiet time. No more kids came out to get a picture. I looked out and there's two young men in their 20s, I guess. And one guy pokes the other guy and says, hey, look at that guy on TV. And the other guy says, oh, that a-hole. And I think that was the highlight.
What a weird highlight to pick.
That's always weird.
Do you have any regrets?
None.
None at all.
It was a great gig. I did it, and it's over with.
What do you do now? What are your days like?
I spend a good deal of time fiddling with computers, as you found out when I couldn't get the other one to work. It kept going off, so I went out. I've got a little shed out here, that's where I am now, and I've got 3 computers out here and one in the house. Well, the one in the house wouldn't work for this effort, so I came out here, and the other one that's in the shed worked good, so that's where we're doing the interview.
When you look back, an honest answer here, Marty, when you look back, because Cleveland at that time had so many great personalities, news and characters, actors. We're here, we're in 2013, this is, can you believe, 23 years after the end of Superhost. Do you feel that that character gets his due in the history of Cleveland television?
Oh yeah, I think more so than he should, perhaps, because Big Chuck went on for a lot longer than I did, even though he had 2 or 3 different sidekicks. Not the least of which was Ernie Anderson. No, I think there's a lot of people in Cleveland, as you probably find out when this thing airs, that still remember Soup, still like him. That's good. That's wonderful.
I want to ask you about a few of those names who were big in Cleveland television during the 20-year period you were there. First up, Gib Stanley.
Gib, oh, the giver, yes. Mr. Kindness, Mr. Warmth. And I like Gib. He worked at our station. We're doing the sports, a little 5-minute sports thing for a long time. He was a very pleasant guy. I like him.
You mentioned one of the names there, Ernie Anderson Goulardi.
My ideal. Yeah. He was marvelous. When I was working in radio there, I used to watch him every Friday night with his crazy antics. And he was a genuine madman when it came to that. He would think of the weirdest stuff to do. One time, I remember there were people running and somebody stopped and drank some water out of a puddle. And he put a voice over in there saying, well, it tastes like tomato juice.
Off the wall.
Bizarre.
Another man who was in the business you were in, the movie business, the Ghoul.
The Ghoul. Let me see. Yeah, he was like a takeoff on Goulardi.
Yeah.
And he worked Cleveland for years. He may still be there. I don't know. He never really took off, I don't think. He tried hard enough, but I don't think he just ever caught on. I don't know why. Maybe because he was at different stations doing the thing, and they never got used to where he was.
Probably the biggest name, at least in Cleveland news at that time, Dorothy Fulltime.
Oh, Dorothy. I worked a summer as an announcer, replacement announcer at 5, just before I went to Channel 43. And I met her a couple times. She was kind of grumpy. But you'd see her, she was very pleasant with the people she worked with, but she had very definite opinions and didn't mind stating them.
As you look back at the career and the life, Marty, is there anything you still want to do? Any ambition you have?
Yeah, I'd like to be a porn star. That's a joke.
Just cut the suit in half and there you go.
I'd like to make a trip to Mars.
Are you a space guy?
Oh yeah, I love it. It's good stuff. I don't think it's getting the respect it deserves now.
Certainly has kind of went downhill in the last few years. Before we get out of here, though, I do want to touch, because I do feel a lot of the humor on Superhost had an adult feel to it. What do you make of what's going on today in politics with the president? What's your opinion?
I think the people of this country have just, they don't use enough good sense in who they elect to things. They seem to elect people with little or no moral compass. That old joke about guys so lazy he went to work whichever way the wind blows kind of applies.
As a person, do you have strong opinions?
I do. I'm a very staunch conservative.
Really? They say most people in the entertainment business are liberal.
Exactly.
But not the case.
I would say yes, most people in showbiz are liberal.
When just some of the big topics of the day, certainly we talk a lot about our gun control right now. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. I don't think there should be any. I think the Second Amendment is the way it should be. And I think all these little inroads the government is making is just because they feel they ought to do something. What? They don't know. So that's another law. We got lots of laws.
And one other thing I would like to touch on is, as it is coming into effect, is Obamacare.
That's another overreach by the federal government, I think.
Who would you consider to be the greatest president of your lifetime?
The the greatest president, let's see. Probably Washington.
You were alive then.
Well, he used to say, but no. When I talked to him last, he was. I'm searching for a joke there, not finding.
Well, we were going around the bend. It was okay though. Who is the greatest of your lifetime? The greatest president in your life?
In my lifetime?
Yes.
I think Ronald Reagan.
Why do most conservatives say that, do you think? That's almost hands down.
Yeah. Well, because he was dead honest in his belief in conservatism, and he made no bones about it. He didn't change. He didn't backslide. He told everybody what he felt, and that's the way it was.
When people look back at your career, because if you search Superhost on the internet, you'll get YouTube videos, you'll get articles on the internet, there's newspaper clippings, this interview will be there. How do you want people to remember you when you're gone 100 years from now?
Oh boy. An interesting character on the TV who tried to tell it like it is.
And I think you did a good job of that for 20 years, and so happy to see you today, Marty, and I can't thank you enough for getting in the outfit again. I'm sure that's something you don't do on a normal basis, but I certainly appreciate it. It's great to see. I think it'll be very nostalgic for your fans who watch this. You're always fun. You've always been good to me, and I want you to sign off the program today as the man who you portrayed for 20 years.
Well, folks, that's all of Scott Spears for today, and me too. Bye.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you, Scott.
I certainly hope you've enjoyed this episode of Scott Spears Now. Marty Sullivan, Superhost, is a great guy. Looking at all he brought to the table today was great. The memorabilia, the costume, the voice. I'm sure it took you back to your childhood or maybe early adult years, because he is a name and face and voice that sticks in our mind. Great, he still has that suit. This has been a lot of fun, and I hope we're able to bring Marty Sullivan back in the future. But for now, this is Scott Spears heading for the dugout.